Welcome back. In this lesson, I'd like to talk about drawing shadows and cast shadows for our drawing assignment in class. We've already learned about value and we've learned about contour lines. Now we're going to combine those two things to create an object that appears to be three-dimensional. Now, to make something look three-dimensional, you have to put the values in the right place. So let's first look at our shadows and our values. There's always going to be some kind of light source. The light source, wherever it is hitting your object, is called the highlight. All right, now, after the highlight comes the lighter values. Sometimes those lighter values might be in the background, and sometimes they might be right next to the highlight. Then you will have some halftones. Those halftones are just outside the lighter value. They're going to be like the middle value, medium tone, however you want to refer to it. But in this picture, it says halftone. Now, the core shadow is the area that is the shadow on the object. All right, it's going to be the darkest part of the shadow that is on the object. That's the core shadow. Then there's going to be some reflected light. There's always reflected light in every picture because the light that's hitting this whole thing is bouncing off the tabletop here and lining up about right here on this sphere. You can see it's just a little bit lighter because that light is bouncing back again. All right. Then you've got the reflected cast shadow, and that's the darkness created by the shadow where there's an empty piece of light and it's actually a little bit darker on that object. Then last of all, we've got the cast shadow, and that is the shadow that is left over by the object. So this sphere is creating this little oval piece here on the top of that table. So those are all the different kinds of shadows we are going to be looking at. Now, if we look again here, kind of zooming out, here is our light source. You always have to be wondering about where your light source is, and that can make things tricky. Depending on where your cast shadow is, you're going to have a pretty clear idea of where your light source is coming from. Now, as things get more complicated and you start throwing more objects in, you really have to start asking yourself some questions and looking very, very carefully. Where is the light coming from? Always ask yourself this. Okay? Then try to pinpoint the highlight. Where is that highlight on the object? Maybe it's on the side. It might not always be in the middle. Maybe it's on the tip of something. Okay? Where is or are the shadows on the objects? So here in this picture by Gina Wright, you can see the shadows here. Then what shape are the shadows? Okay, look at these cast shadows. They are some crazy weird looking shapes. They are not pentagons or hexagons or perfect little squares or something. These are some pretty crazy looking shapes, and you need to be aware of making the shapes really, really clear where those shadow shapes are. Then what shapes or what is the darkest part of those shadows? Maybe the darkest part of the shadow is back here because we've got so much reflected light. Maybe the darkest part of the shadow is right next to the object. You have to really closely observe. And boy, cast shadows can be tricky, tricky things. Here's a little one I found on the internet. This is called Real Life of Rubbish. And the artist here has taken these different regular household goods and stacked them up so that the cast shadow actually looks like two people kind of sitting on some boxes here. Or these ones I found. All right, this one, a bunch of letters stacked up on the wall, and with the light source coming the right way, almost looks or makes a profile of a face. Likewise, shadows are not always going to be the same size or same shape of the object that they are. Like this bicycle with the light shining through it creates a very elongated oval for the wheel, and this photograph with the light coming here really casts these very long shadows and changes the way that shadows look. So in my demonstration, I'm going to be drawing these 4 different cubes, and actually I'm going to be drawing this cube right here on the lower left. Now let me zoom this out ever so slightly so I can get it just off my screen. And here is the homework. Now, the first thing you're going to do is put your name on it and then put your grade and your section. All right, once you've got that done, you're going to watch the video, obviously, that's what you're doing now. Then you're going to find one simple object, maybe a cardboard box, maybe a cereal box or a tennis ball, some kind of basic shape that will be easy for you to draw. You're going to draw it 5 times. You're going to stand that object on the table, find a movable light source, such as your desk lamp or a flashlight or something. Then, using your measuring skills and your value skills that we've already learned, you're going to draw that object and its cast shadow. Okay? Draw that same object each time, and each time you do, move the light to a different position. Then closely observe and draw the shadows and the cast shadows, and label each different part of that shadow. So here we go. Here's my cube that I'll be drawing. And in the video here, I just kind of show you that you can see this cast shadow, and each time I move it, that shadow moves, and each side of that cube is different. Now, as I pull my picture up here, you'll be able to see I'm going to be drawing this one from the lower left. Now, I'm using my pencil, and I'm measuring, just like we talked about in class. I'm measuring this vertical, measuring the diagonals, and putting them down. Measuring this diagonal, and this vertical. Okay, and as you see me slowly put this box in, I also have the line in the back where it's sitting on the table. For each of your drawings, I'd like you to make sure that they're sitting on a table or something so we have a sense of where the light and the cast shadow is. You can see here in the back, I'm now drawing this cast shadow and shading it in. Now I'm using the shading, and although I've got my video on fast forward, it might look like I'm kind of scribbling, but I'm going slowly and carefully and thinking about which area is darker and which area is lighter. You can see right here I've shaded this back of the cube a little bit darker. Now I'm looking at the counter right here and shading it so that this counter is darker, the wall is lighter, the shadow in the background is nice and dark, and I even have this shadow up here. Now I label my cast shadow, my medium tone, my highlight, and I actually decided to make that the middle value so it matches up there. So I've got those matched. Now you would draw the 4 other options of your object so that each object shows a different kind of shadow arrangement and a different cast shadow. Okay, so that is how to finish your drawing for your shadow and your cast shadow homework for art class.